Rain used to be the best Protoss player on the planet. He was dominating events, he won GSL and performed internationally. But surprisingly, he ended his career at his peak for a reason that may surprise you. Today we'll delve into the story of certainly my favorite Protoss player of all time, Rain. Born in 1992 in South Korea, Rain began his StarCraft adventure in high school where he and his friends would regularly play in PC bangs. He first took part in a university tournament where he, according to his own words, got absolutely destroyed. But he found playing to be pretty fun, so he kept on going and gave a tournament another shot. The winner of that tournament was awarded a semi-pro license, so a lot of young promising players gave it their all to attain it. He actually reached the finals, so he thought, maybe this pro gamer thingy isn't that hard after all. Maybe if I practice a little more, I could get there. His arrogance was quickly put in check as he rapidly got knocked out on his second try. However, on his third try, Rain finally won the semi-pro gamer license, yet he didn't tell his parents, although they were aware that their son perhaps spent a little bit too much time on the computer. He would play all night and sleep at school during the day. Not exactly the best way to graduate if you ask me, but he ended up not too bad in StarCraft in the end. Turns out sometimes you have to listen to that call inside your ribcage, as the French philosopher Pascal said, the heart has its reasons, which reason knows nothing of. Shortly after, he began his journey as a trainee for Team MBC Game Hero. Although he got blasted in his first matches, his manager really believed in him, and it gave him strength to pursue his dream. He kept on going to school and wanted to pursue his dream of being a pro gamer while still graduating high school. Rain struggled in individual tournaments, but rapidly gained playtime as he delivered in a big way in the famous Pro League, where he defeated the likes of Sulky or even Baby, that we now know as TY. He even all-killed Wassenhose in the grand finals, which was nothing short of Jaedong's team, who happened to be one of Rain's victims on that day. But soon after, the manager that liked him got replaced by the new one who didn't like him so much, and vice versa, and thus Rain got kicked out of the team. And at this time, Rain thought, my life is screwed, my life is done. Getting kicked out of a team gave you a bad rep. People thought that if you got kicked, there must have been a reason, there must be something wrong with you. And from there, teams are more reluctant to give you a shot. So he had to find a solution all by himself. He began streaming on Africa TV with the handle Anonymous Pro Gamer. No mic, no cam, just pure gameplay. He grinded all day non-stop and ended up attending a tryout for Team SK Telecom and went 5 wins, 2 losses in map scores, which is amazing when you consider the level SKT was at back then. The next day, he received a call from the SKT manager saying he passed the test and he could officially join their ranks. This was the beginning of the Rain we know and love. At this point, he had completely dropped out of school to fully focus on his dream to become a StarCraft champion. Fast forward to Wings of Liberty. Rain was still very young at that time. As the Casper teams started transitioning from Brood War to StarCraft 2, Rain was only 20 years old and he had his whole career ahead of him. While many Brood War legends, such as Boxer for instance, were getting pretty old. He qualified for the very stacked GSL Codes tournament, despite having only a few months of experience in the game. The soon-to-be Korean legend already marked his territory by defeating Parting at his peak and the likes of CJ Hero and Liquid Hero on his way. Rain caught everyone by surprise by winning the OSL, which was pretty much as big as the GSL back then. It was a major Korean tournament in 2012, 14 years ago, where he destroyed Dongray Gu 4-1 in the grand finals, earning a nice $30,000 paycheck on top of his very first individual trophy. And this was just a few months after he had made the switch from Brood War to SC2. Back then, in Wings of Liberty, Protoss was played in a very aggressive manner. You had players like MC, Liquid Hero, even Parting, who were known for their fantastic army control and in-your-face playstyle. The older generations will remember the infamous Soul Train popularized by Parting. Back then, this is how Protoss were supposed to be played. Playing standard macro games was not exactly popular, until our friend from SKT showed up and revolutionized Protoss. Rain did the exact opposite. He defended, counterattacked, Scouted religiously and focused to play exclusively longer games where his superior adaptation and mechanics would give him the wins. He would rely on clean and sharp builds, and he was the definition of a solid player. Rain felt unbreakable. Rain also showed his mental composure a few times. The ASL where he defeated Dongrigu I mentioned earlier, he was actually down 3-0 in the semi-finals against Last, a Terran opponent, until he made the comeback of his life and won 4 maps in a row to move on to the grand finals where he later brought the trophy back home. He's just that type of guy, you know. At this point, in late 2012, Rain was considered the ultimate Protoss player, and certainly the best one in the world. But StarCraft 2 was going to go into a new expansion, Heart of the Swarm, and there's nothing worse for a high-performing player at the top to have to relearn a new expansion and risk the chance to lose their edge. But as we saw earlier, Rain and adaptation go hand in hand. 5 months after Heart of the Swarm came out, the Protoss powerhouse ended up in the grand finals of the GSL Code S, losing 4-2 to a Terran you may have heard of, Maru. Rain's rivalry with Maru wouldn't stop there. The second place finisher is the first loser, as they say, so he had to come back stronger and take his revenge on his Terran rival. But first, he had to play the Odd 6 Cup, a GSL-based tournament featuring the absolute greatest players StarCraft 2 had to offer back then. At this point, in PvZ, Swarmos play was considered extremely powerful, yet it didn't seem to be a problem for the guy who was about to win yet another major title. 2014 passed and Rain had some very good results like a second place in IM San Jose, barely losing to CJ Hero, but that year didn't go as well as people expected from him. But in 2015, things were about to change. 2015 is actually the year where I met him for the first time in my life in DreamHack Tours. I watched him play and truly I was in awe. He wasn't the fastest, that's true, but everything felt so clean, so smooth, so perfect. The thing is, people knew he was a safe player and they started abusing his playstyle so he couldn't perform as well, but suddenly, Rain found the magic recipe. GSL Season 2 was one of the most stacked events you could possibly imagine. I mean, just look at the names: Rogue, Hero, Parting, Innovation, Dark, SOS, just to name a few. Rain had just left SK Telecom T1 after 4 years with them to join a foreign team, My Insanity, and was about to play the most insanely stacked tournament. Rain decided to speedrun the first group stage and later ended up in the playoffs where it faced someone he was eager to get a revenge on. Jinair's Maru. This time around, he knew that his safe, all-around playstyle would be highly anticipated. Therefore, he started to reinvent himself a little more and began implementing cheeses and all-in strategies to catch his opponents off guard. After Rain got the Maru problem solved, he went on to play against 2 great Zergs in Curious and Biol in the GSL Grand Finals. Rain, on top of his magistral macro play, certainly learned a page or two from the Protoss Book of Bullshit. Literally 4 days later, the GSL champion flew to Germany and went on to assert his dominance by winning his first Home Story Cup, which actually was his first premier event outside of Korea. But suddenly, against all odds, the unthinkable happened. Rain announced he would step away from StarCraft 2. Nobody understood how the man who had just won Home Story Cup in GSL could possibly retire at his peak. His father was suffering from a liver disease, and Rain made the decision to undergo serious surgery and donate a part of his liver to his dad to save his life. The Protoss champion had to rest and recover, but fans were still in shock, thinking that after resting, he could make a comeback. But much to our surprise, Rain stated in December of the same year that his retirement had actually nothing to do with the surgery. He actually wanted to retire after leaving SKT, but received a very juicy offer from My Insanity and thus decided to give StarCraft 2 another year, the year in which he won both GSL and Home Story Cup. Rain said, "Because I decided my retirement, I felt free. I enjoyed every games I played. I used to have an obsession with victory. I used to yearn for it. However, after I decided I would retire, I just did my best without any desire." He also added, "You should see your own mind. You should keep asking yourself whether you still have a passion for gaming or the reason why you're doing it. This is what most pro gamers should ask themselves when they consider retirement. Rain felt like he accomplished what he wanted, and he was no longer having fun while playing. He felt forced to train all day, and it no longer suited him. Our beloved Protoss then made a move many of his compatriots also made. He returned where his story began, StarCraft Brood War, and began streaming on Africa TV, which was still a very popular platform in South Korea. He actually gets 5-digit viewer counts very frequently and attracts a lot of fans, and now makes a great living. On top of streaming, he also competed and managed to win several premier events, like the ASL and the KSL, which are StarCraft Brood War equivalents of the GSL, if you will. I will never cease to wonder how much he could have achieved had he kept on playing. The player I was looking up to was gone, and I had to find my own path now. I still have the conviction that he would have been the greatest Protoss of all time, but it's easy to think that way when someone retires at their peak. Rain will remain a player who marked his era, both by his nonchalant attitude and his immaculate skills. Who knows what he could have achieved had he stayed? That will forever remain a mystery.